Hi, it's Rory Darkins here, and I'm really looking forward to presenting the upcoming live stream, Positive Sports Psychology, Cultivating Deep Wellbeing. In this live stream, we'll be covering what wellbeing is and how we measure it. We'll be looking at the links between wellbeing and sustainable high performance. We'll identify practical, science-based strategies to optimize wellbeing, and we'll have a Q&A in order to answer your questions to help you build deep wellbeing for yourself and others in your life. It's on Saturday the 10th of September and tickets are available now. Would love to see you there.
Hi everyone, my name is Jan Sibbersen. I am from Germany. I am the founder, owner, and CEO of Sailfish, a triathlon brand. And sports-wise, I hold the Ironman Hawaii swim record, which stands at 46:29 in 2018. And you're listening to the Physical Performance Show with Brad.
And the winner is...
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
Phelps with 10 meters left. 3 minutes too good. The crowd roaring. Freeman wins down.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to episode 337 of the Physical Performance Show, proudly brought to you by Polar's stunning new generation running watches, the Polar Pacer and the Polar Pacer Pro, and our upcoming 10th of September live stream event, Positive Sports Psychology, Cultivating Deep Wellbeing, featuring positive sports psychology researcher and mental skills coach, Rory Darkins. This will be a live stream event not to be missed. If you are interested in leveling up your sports psychology game, then jump over to physicalperformanceshow.com, secure your ticket from just $49 per registrant, and get set for a whole bunch of wonderful psychological learnings. Now, for those that cannot make the 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time live stream slot, don't despair, a post-event recording will be made available to all registrants. Rory will cover 4 modules and also include a live Q&A time. So once again, jump over to physicalperformanceshow.com to secure your ticket to our upcoming live stream event featuring Rory Darkins. I'm Brad Beer, sports and exercise physiotherapist by trade and training and founder of Pogo Physio. Each week, we'll bring you the latest and greatest information and inspiration designed to help you perform at your physical best. And of course, we do this across a range of our different episodes, interest editions, coaches' corners, learnings catch-up episodes, featured performers, and expert editions. And on today's episode, we profile German endurance athlete Jan Sibbersen, the founder and owner and CEO of Sailfish. This is a great story of pursuing your passion and developing that passion into a commercial enterprise. But there's so much to Jan. Jan began his sporting career with an award-filled 10-year stint in the German national swim team between 1990 and the year 2000, simultaneously completing studies at Harvard University with a degree in economics. Jan then ventured into the investment banking world. However, his true calling drew him back to the sporting arena, and this time to the world of triathlon. Between 2001 and 4, Jan went on to achieve 4 first out of the water titles at the Ironman Hawaii World Championships. And in 2004, Jan set the world record Ironman swim time of 42 minutes, 17 seconds at Ironman Germany in Frankfurt. Jan continued to compete professionally in the global triathlon circuit until 2007 when he founded Sailfish. The company expanded internationally and continues to set global standards as one of the world's best triathlon brands amongst both professionals and amateurs. But then in 2018, Jan was unsettled with missing the fastest Kona swim time by a mere 6 seconds in 2003, so he launched a 2-year comeback to finally break the Ironman World Championship swim record at the age of 43, 17 years after his first appearance at the Hawaii Ironman. Jan swam a blistering 46:29, of which the record still stands today. Between 2015 and 19, Jan ran the Triathlon Convention Europe, and between 2016 and 21, Jan managed Patrick Langer, the 2-time Ironman World Triathlon Champion. There's a whole lot in this episode you're going to enjoy. Here is my conversation with Jan Sibbersen. Jan Sibbersen, fastest man in the water in triathlon, Ironman distance, founder and owner and the CEO of Sailfish. Welcome to the Physical Performance Show.
Thanks, Brad, for having me.
I've been looking forwards to this. Your bio is exemplary. You are certainly an achiever across many domains, from business to innovation to physical performance to managing dual world Ironman champion Patrick Langer. There's not much you haven't done, Jan. It's impressive. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's, some way you have to go about your career in triathlon and to become president of World Triathlon. So I'm trying to see every single angle of it before I apply. I've been in the industry for over 20 years and in a lot of roles, as you just outlined. And, I like to have those different angles. And I think I have a pretty round picture now of the sport. And it's been very exciting. It's been very challenging. And it's always new, something new, and looking forward to the next chapters.
The company Sailfish was founded in 2007 after you competed professionally as a triathlete and had the fastest swim split at the Hawaii Ironman World Triathlon Championships between 2001 and 2004. But part of your story that I think so many people really respect and take a lot of inspiration from is, and I know you've spoken about it a lot in the past, but in 2017 you were unsettled with missing that Kona swim fastest split by 6 seconds in 2003. So you launched a 24-month comeback to head back at the age of 43 and set the new world record for the Kona swim at 46:29, which still stands today, blisteringly fast. What drove that? Was it just unfinished business? You had more to offer, or was it going to be a great springboard for Sailfish? All the above.
Well, it's kind of all of the above, but I think some of the one factor that is probably a little bit lesser known is that I had a really bad kite surfing accident back in 2015, and it left me in a very poor orthopedic state, I would say. And so by the time 2016 came around, things got just a lot worse. Basically what happened, I landed with my kiteboard, or not without the kiteboard, but I landed on the beach instead of in the water, and really got compressed quite heavily. And so the doctors recommended to me, and they said, look, the best thing for you to do is to get back into back into movement, to get back into sports. And yes, there was this piece of unfinished business from the early 2000s. And yes, in 2016, I happened to go back to Kona to help Patrick Lange. Back then, he took the third place. And so, when I was there in Kona in 2016, it kind of like all came together. I was like, okay, I got to look for my health. There's still this unfinished business of the record. And, I didn't have the company, definitely not in mind. I mean, it definitely helped Sailfish, that I swam that record, but that wasn't the first objective.
So the injuries you sustained, Jan, as in fractures or soft tissue injuries, or a combination of? It
was actually just soft tissue, and some orthopedic guys, and also my physio, and also the osteo. Everybody said, look, it actually would have been better if you would have fractured something, because then the energy would have kind of like left the body in some way. But so it was all cramped up, and it had gotten a lot worse between 2015 and 2016 when I didn't really start treatment right away. So that thing actually occupied me for pretty much 5 years until I really got it out of my body. And I still feel it sometimes today. That really triggered also for me to get back into shape, not only swimming, but also from a general fitness perspective. But of course, we're all we're triathletes. We're a bit extreme. People tell you, oh, you gotta do something, and then okay, let's do Ironman Hawaii again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I mean, you grew up as a swimmer. You were always comfortable in the water. A German open team member, national team member. What got you into swimming? Who were the swimming stars that you were aspiring to emulate when you were a junior?
So very early days was Michael Gross, also called the Albatross. He won, I believe, 3 or 4 Olympic gold medals back in '94 in LA, and think in 88 as well. And then when I grew up, it was more, since I swam long distance freestyle, it was really Jörg Hoffmann and Kieran Perkins. I'll never forget that duel in Perth in I believe it was 1990 or 1991. And Kieran Perkins and Hoffman, they swam 1,450 meters next to each other, pretty much 1,500 meters next to each other. And then Hoffman won by the touch of her hand, and it was at 1450 for the 59. It was a world record, I think, as well. So that really is the one race that's stuck with me. And I was 15 years old back then. That was really inspiring. So that's how I got into swimming through my family, through my parents. My dad used to be a teacher in physical education, and I think they threw me in the water when I was 2.5 or something. So at a very young age.
It was an early baptism. I remember that Perth swim as well. I was circa 10 or 11, and likewise inspired by Kieran Perkins here in Australia. He was one of our true sporting stars of the time and continues to be so. The professional triathlon scene, what took you into that after swimming? You obviously studied at Harvard University with your bachelor's degree in economics, then went on to work in investment banking, and then you decided to fit some years of professional triathlon in as well.
It's a natural progression, don't you think? I mean, just you walk up the ladder, Harvard, Goldman Sachs, and then professional triathlon. I think everybody would agree, right?
So, yeah.
No, I mean, obviously, the years at Harvard were probably the most, by far the most interesting years of my life, and most challenging years, and most exciting years, or exhilarating years, because aside from the studies, also just the people that you meet there is just next level. And then investment banking, I found, it's super interesting job, super interesting field. You learn about the world. You learn about how to run a company, or maybe not how to run, but how to finance a company, and what all the factors that come into the world of finance. But it wasn't really my passion. I found it fascinating, but I wasn't really passionate about it. Looking at the perspective of going into an office for the next 20 years or so. And of course, back then the assumption was to retire at the age of 45 to 50. It didn't really appeal to me. I mean, everybody, not everybody, but if you have the chance, you retire young. But I feel it's, and what do you do then, right? I got into triathlons already in the mid-90s. A little bit on the side of the swimming career, and then while I was living in New York, I went down to the Caribbean to do the half Ironman in St. Croix, and there I qualified for Kona, and then I tasted the Kona waters, and I tasted the Kona atmosphere, and I tasted the entire atmosphere of let's say professional sports and the sports realm, and it resonated with me, and I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. And first, it was just as a pro, racing on the international circuit. And then eventually it developed into a business by starting to sell wetsuits on the side. And my original plan was to go back to business school and then potentially back into corporate, but that never materialized, and I'm not so unhappy about it.
It's always inspiring to see someone, and I know it's cliched, but follow your passion. But when you can combine the two, I've experienced this every day in my work in Australia as a sports physio. I only grew up wanting to be a triathlete or a physio, and I get to combine those two loves. And it's, there's not a day that's not fulfilling. Of course, there's challenging days in anything, but it's fulfilling and it's enriching. And I don't think anything else could replace that when you're wired that way. Yeah, and of all your performances physically, what would be your highlight from your sporting accolades? Was it the world record swim in 2017 in the Ironman?
It was definitely, there were, let's say in my swimming career, there were a couple of races, and really probably just a couple, less than 5, I would say, where I really managed to get into like a state of flow. For those of you who have experienced it before, if you have experienced it before, you know what I'm talking about. it's like the most exhilarating feeling that you could possibly imagine. It doesn't necessarily have to be in sports. It can be in other things in life, but basically you merge with what you're doing. You become one with what you're doing. And then when you hit the finish line, or in that case, you hit the wall after 400 meter freestyle or 1500 meter freestyle, there's usually an unbelievable time on the board, and you can't really remember much of how you got there, how you did it. And I was fortunate enough to have that feeling, as I said, a few times in my life, and I wouldn't want to trade it for anything else. The record in Kona in 2018 was a lot more work, I can tell you. I can very, very well remember how much it hurt. But I think that was probably the smartest performance that I've had in my life. And I was 43. I had a lot of experience, and I don't think I could have done it without that experience. And also couldn't have done it without the experience of failing so much at trying to break that record. So I had these thousands of pieces of the puzzle that I would try to juggle and to put together on a single day. And probably 980 of them fell into place. Definitely the most important ones. Then there was a bit of luck involved, but as they say, luck happens when preparation meets opportunity. So that last little bit was there also. So I mean, and then obviously from a promotional or from a media perspective, that was by far the biggest success. Nobody cares about my 400 free from 1993 as a junior in Germany.
Well, I do. What was your time in the 400 free, Jan?
I can tell you it was 4:01.66, 66 of hundredths of a second. And I just remember it so well because it really burned itself into my brain, that single race. There were one or two others. But I think I was, it must have been like 1993, so I was like 18. I mean, today, forget about it. They'll laugh at you. But back then, it was a really good time for a junior. That 4:01 for the 400.
It's very impressive, Jan. And I did get the date wrong there. It was 2018 that you set the record, but in 2017, you decided to launch.
No worries. It took 2 years to get there.
Yeah, like you said, the 2 year journey. But I did also smile. I heard you speaking with the Endurance Innovators podcast, mentioning that you stopped and celebrated that for a little while, and then thought, right, I better finish the Ironman now. Off I go for the 180 on the bike and the marathon.
I knew it. I knew that I had to finish. Andrew Messick, the CEO of Ironman, he reminded me in T1, he said, "You better finish the race now." That's what he said. But I had so I knew some folks from the TV crew, from the German TV crew, and they brought in a few more of my friends into the very close to the transition area. So all my friends were there, and they were going nuts. So I couldn't just run by. I had to party a little bit with them. Yeah. Next thing I remember is I went into the transition tent, and I threw up because I swallowed a lot of water in that swim. So that salt water had to go out first before I got on the bike.
So behind the tent, you threw up. Let's go here. We've asked numerous swimming featured performers and expert editions over the course of the show, Jan, this same question. What would be your top 3 tips for optimizing swimming? What are the top 3 tips from Jan Sibbersen?
Tip number 1, consistency. I think that's also by far the most important tip. Swimming comes in, and especially if you're not so good swimmer, and if you even don't like it so much. If you stick with it, and if you have maybe having a coach, maybe that's another tip. But if you swim consistently, you'll become more familiar with water. You'll start to eventually, hopefully, like water a little bit more. But swimming and the form and the technique and the endurance and the specific endurance, they go away so quickly in swimming when you're not consistent. So that's my absolute number 1 advice. My number 2 advice would be, especially for the triathletes out there, technique work. And technique work probably combine that with having a coach. because I see so many triathletes who are basically in their own way by creating too much resistance, either underwater or on top of the water. Or for you guys that don't have a swimming background, the most important factor you need to focus on is lowering your resistance in the water. That comes with a good technique. And that, and then the result of that in the perfect world is you don't even have to train a single hour more, and you get faster just by reducing resistance. And my third tip would be to try to swim in a group as much as possible. Because, I mean, I know it for myself, I've been swimming for more than 30 years. And there is for me, there's nothing more challenging than going to a training by myself. Sometimes it's okay, but swimming in a group where there's somebody who is always just a tiny little bit faster than you, and where it just hurts a little bit to stick with him or with her, or on their feet, that's the stuff that gets you, that will make you better over time. If you always swim by yourself and you're not being challenged by somebody next to you, in front of you, or behind you, chances are you always end up where you started from.
I'll recap those, Jan. Top 3 tips: 1, consistency; 2, technique work; 3, swimming in a group. The familiarity with water, like you referenced, I recall in my physio work, one of Australia's Olympians who returned to the Gold Coast had, after the London Olympic Games and had won gold, she had 2 months out of the water, and she commented, I remember, that her stroke count had gone up by 2 strokes per 50 metres as an Olympic gold medalist simply through removing herself from the water for 8 weeks. And I thought, my gosh, that was quite confronting. It was the longest break she'd had in her swimming career since she'd started as a junior. But I remember thinking, wow, for the recreational triathlete in the water 2 or 3 times a week, as opposed to 25 hours a week, it's a real testament to that feel on the water, isn't it?
It is, and we would. I would typically take, let's say, time off or vacation in the summer or whenever the season break was, no longer than 3 weeks. And even after those 3 weeks, you get back in the water and you feel like dead driftwood or something. It's like it feels horrible, right? But I guess every once in a while it's good to take some time off, and also if you do want to change your technique and you want to break up existing patterns, it sometimes is beneficial to not have that motion memory, and so you make a little, you have a cut for a few weeks, and then you kind of like start from scratch and you start new with very short distances, and you improve your technique. It's much harder if you swim every single day and you try to change your technique, because the motion is so ingrained in your brain.
Jan, let's continue this top 3 game. What are your top 3 drills or technique tips, drills for swimmers?
We're really getting into the nitty gritty stuff here. Top 3 drills. I like to do a good catch up stroke in order to lengthen the stroke. I'm a big fan of that. I do like number 2, sculling, because it gives you a very good feel and grab of the water, especially in that first third of the stroke underwater, where it's extremely important that you grab it already and create some forward motion. I think number 3, I would probably put working on hip rotation. Very, very delicate topic. I know there's a few different schools of swimming out there, but I think everybody or every coach would agree that if I say that the freestyle swimming, it is initiated with the hip. And to work on that and to have perfect balance, that is something that's definitely beneficial to work on.
So practical, hip rotation works, sculling for the feel and grab, and catch up drill for the length of the stroke. On the hip rotation, anything that you'd use across your swimming career to foster that? that rotation and the sinking with the shoulders, the torso?
Yeah, I mean, we would do like, you do three strokes, and then you would kind of like lie on one side, and then you would initiate getting to the other side by initiating with the hip the movement for the rest of the body. It's oftentimes for somebody with a swimming background, it's more like an activation thing, so that you activate that movement because you kind of know how it works. Whereas if you have a triathlete, you kind of have to teach it from scratch, because sometimes they don't know. So it would be a bit of a different exercise. But in order to, and then coming back to the other top three that we first talked about, it is, in my opinion, and so important to pretty much, when you do those drills, to get immediate feedback. Because you do something and you kind of think, okay, maybe I did the right thing. But your feeling, what you did, your subjective feeling to the objectiveness of a coach who sees what you've been doing, there's usually quite a gap sometimes. So that's why I think it is so beneficial to, at least once a week, have somebody to look over your stroke, or maybe once every 2 weeks if it's not possible any earlier. Yeah.
Great tips. Jan, I'm going to let you off the hook with one more top three, and you'll smile when I throw it at you, and that is, we can't not do this one. You have founded the Sailfish swim nights in Germany. I grew up as a triathlete in the 90s as a junior, living in a small town where we had a big river, so we were always doing open water swimming, so it was very natural. But what are your top three tips for swimmers, particularly triathletes, to optimize their open water swimming? It's a different beast altogether from the pool. Jan, what would be your tips?
Number one, and this is something that I have it very, let's say, naturally. I've never had an issue. I never thought about getting into open water and feeling awkward or weird, but a lot of people have, let's say, fear of open water. It's dark, there might be waves, there might be currents, there might be weather coming, whatsoever. Put all that together with a situation in a triathlon where there's maybe a couple hundred people around you starting at the same time. I would say familiarization. So again, we're speaking about continuity, but you need to familiarize yourself with open water. If you know that you're not the best open water swimmer, if you don't train it, the chances that you have a bad swim on race day are pretty high. So getting familiar with open water takes time and can be trained. That's one reason we put on the Sailfish swim nights every week in the summer here in Germany. Number two, I would say the biggest mistake I see in triathletes is that they don't swim in a straight line. And again, it's something where, you say, okay, you're pretty decent in the pool. You're trying to translate that pool performance into the open water. You swim open water and, suddenly you're 5 seconds slower per 100. And why is that? And oftentimes, and sometimes the GPS watch tells you that you didn't swim 1,500 meters, but you swam 1,600 meters. And it goes so quickly. So when I shot for that record in Kona, just to give you an idea, I broke the record by 15 seconds. That's 20 meters. That's 20 meters on 3.86 kilometers. That's nothing, right? And I'm pretty sure I didn't wear a watch, but I'm pretty sure I didn't lose 5 meters on that swim because I swam in such a straight line. Now, I happen to be relatively natural on that one, but it's something that you can train. Whatever, with closed eyes, or you swim towards a buoy, you have somebody watch you, etc. But if you're in for the second and minute hunt on your triathlons, have a look at swimming in a straight line. That'll get you a lot of extra seconds by not training a single additional hour. And you see, I'm trying to be very efficient at this because I was also always deprived of time for training, especially in 2017, 2018, running the company, having a private life, and then putting the training in. So you got to be, if you want to be efficient, you look at those kind of things. And so that was two, right? So I got to have another one. Third one, it's probably also adapting to conditions in open water. I think that's an important one as well. Not so much here in Germany or in Europe, especially not in Germany. We don't really swim much in the ocean, and we don't really swim with current. But I've had many swims in oceans and in rivers and whatsoever. And really knowing the course, knowing what's going on, and kind of like knowing that you can't really fight the elements. So don't fight against the waves, don't fight against the current, and do the right thing, do the efficient thing. I think that's also very important in open water swimming. So know the circumstances, I would say.
Adapt to the conditions, number 3. Learn to swim in a straight line and be familiar with the open water, not afraid of it, which can be trained, as you said. And Jan, on number 3, they're adapting to the conditions. I think growing up here in Australia with the surf, if you're involved in the surf club, you're sort of taught how to read a rip and look at the currents. And so you intuitively take that into an open water setting. But I'm also very aware that for latecomers to the sport and to open water swimming, that natural ability to look at a piece of open water is not always there. But that, once again, can be trained, right? It's getting around people that can share tips. Yeah, and on the swimming in a straight line, I grew up watching the domestic triathlon season in Australia and watching the likes of Brad Bevan and other great triathletes integrate sighting into their swim stroke every couple of strokes, they're sight into the buoy. Any practical tips on how to best sight where you're going when you're swimming?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if there's waves, you never sight when you feel that you're on the bottom of the wave. You always want to sight when you're on top of the wave so that you see something. But even then, if the buoy then is in the bottom of the wave, you might not see the buoy. So it's a little bit tricky. On average, I would say I would breathe every 6th or 8th stroke to the front, and I would try to blend it in. So it's like a blended sighting, and then you turn the head to the side, and you're also breathing at the same time. So it's a blended in motion. It's a bit hard to explain it, but I think we've all seen it. But it'll give you the benefit of sighting and breathing. What I sometimes see with triathletes is that they forget to stick their head back into the water. So what happens over time is it's always the head is out, and the more tired they get, the more they take the head out, and the further the legs sink. And obviously that slows you down. So I think, when you train this and when you are also in a racing situation, it is important to remember to always put the head down again so that your feet come up again and that you don't create too much resistance. I think that's something that, especially for the second half of a race, you see very often, and you're like, you'd be so much faster if you just put your head down again.
So don't forget to put your head down in between the sighting, which is hopefully, as you say, a blended motion.
Yeah.
Jan, thanks for those practical tips and for the swimming masterclass there. We'll all benefit from that.
I feel like a coach already, but I'm not a good coach.
You're listening to Jan Sibbersen, CEO and founder of Sailfish. Today's episode is lovingly brought to you by Polar. Polar recently launched 2 stunning new generation running watches, the Polar Pacer and the Polar Pacer Pro. These new running watches give both the first-time runner and the serious runner the tools and the insights to track their performance and inform training. Both watches offer an incomparable running experience with powerful training and recovery features that help runners understand their body and know when they're doing too much or not enough to reach their goals. The Polar Pacer Pro, that's the watch for those who want to run better. It's one of the most powerful and sophisticated running watches ever built. It's ultra-light with a high-performance core processor, including an extensive suite of advanced training tools that will help serious runners improve their running economy and performance. It has built-in navigation and running power, and it debuts at an incredible $499. Meanwhile, the Polar Pacer, well, that's the watch for those who want to fall in love with running. It's an ideal running watch for those who are starting their journey as runners, embodying the simplicity of running with all the essentials, plus the specialized training, sleep and recovery tools needed to fall in love with the sport. And it helps runners get started at $299. So if you feel like it's time to beat your best, jump across to Shop Polar over at polar.com. Support for today's show also comes from our upcoming live stream event, Positive Sports Psychology, Cultivating Deep Wellbeing, with positive sports psychology researcher, former guest of the show and mental skills coach, Rory Darkins. Rory will translate the best of the research into practical and easy to understand strategies that anyone will be able to apply to live and thrive. Topics covered will include well-being, how to measure it, links between well-being and performance, and practical strategies for optimizing well-being. There'll also be a live Q&A session, and tickets are available from just $49 per registrant over at physicalperformanceshow.com. If you cannot make the 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time zone for the live stream, don't despair. A post-event recording and a copy of the PDF presentations will be made available to every registrant. Now, for our patrons of the show, you'll receive complimentary access. Keep an eye out for the access code coming your way shortly. Talking about patrons, if you'd like to practically support the show in terms of production, you can do so from just $5 per month, and in return, we'll grant you complimentary access to our entire back catalogue of live stream events, including Dr. Stephen Seiler, Dr. Shona Halson, Rinny McGregor, and of course our upcoming live stream featuring Rory Darkins. For now, let's jump back with this week's guest, Jan Sibbersen, CEO, founder and owner of Sailfish, sharing some wonderful highs, lows and learnings from not only his sporting career but also his commercial enterprises as well. Jan, shifting gears to the technology, the company, the website Sailfish, it says, we must rediscover the joy of outside activities. We must swim, bike and run in nature and embrace the joy wholeheartedly. At Sailfish, we've worked relentlessly so that you can enjoy these activities with the very best equipment possible. Here in Australia, and probably worldwide, there's that adage that if it's German-made, it's good quality and it's going to last. So if there's a German-made suit, that's generally the sentiment. I first saw the suit Yokohama for the start of the World Triathlon Series, working there as a physiotherapist, where we were in an outdoor pool. It was quite cold, very cold actually, and numerous World Triathlon Series athletes and teams, federations were swimming in the Sailfish suits. I got quite excited. I was like, there's the Sailfish suits. Where is the company up to with innovating, and what sets it apart from the marketplace with some of the other brands that are well established around the globe? Well,
we've been around for 15 years now, and let's say I'm still, even though I have a team around me, I'm still probably the head product developer when it comes to wetsuits. So there's no wetsuit that goes into mass production unless I've tried it inside out many times and for quite some kilometers. But at the same time, I also believe it's important to have the other end of the spectrum, the people who are just entering the sport, or the people who are not good swimmers, to be part of the prototyping process and to be able to get their input as well on the product. So we're always trying to make that a blend or a mix. Then secondly, when it comes to material, I mean, we're just like pretty much all wetsuit brands in the world, or triathlon wetsuit brands. We all produce in the Far East, in Asia. And it is also no secret that Yamamoto is usually our number one supplier of neoprene. So what does it come down to? The differentiation parts. I know a very big factor is actually the inner material. The inner material of a wetsuit defines how flexible it is, how comfortable it feels to the skin, how warm it keeps you, and so on and so forth. So, you can really make a difference by using extremely high-end inner material, and there are actually a lot of differences in that. We put a great emphasis on comfort. So we have quite a few more panels in the suit that most of our competitors, which means that it becomes more of a three-dimensional fit. And then looking at buoyancy, I try to keep the suits in a way that they have relatively neutral buoyancy. So it means, it doesn't really push your legs out, or it doesn't really push your torso out. It's relatively leveled, so that you swim more like a speedboat. There's different levels of buoyancy, of course, for the entire suit. But in general, I would say that the swimming position of a Sailfish wetsuit is quite neutral. Yeah, I found that to be very successful over the past 15 years. I think the European consumers have confirmed that. We are the number one brand for performance wetsuits in Europe in the premium segment. And now we're trying to take it to other markets as well. So that's in 3 minutes or so my pitch for Sailfish wetsuits.
I think all you had to say is that you'll swim like a speedboat, and that was it. You'll have people lining up. Jan,
try to keep it short. Yeah. 2
things to explore here: fitting a wetsuit and getting a wetsuit on. What are the tips? I love that Sailfish is a company that also values education, and I know on your road trip, you'd have people from the company, the team at the swim starts to help people actually get into a suit properly. I've heard you cite that you can have the best suit on the planet, but if you don't put it on properly, it's not going to be the tool that you want it to necessarily be. So firstly, how do we fit a suit? It can be a little bit overwhelming and nerve-wracking. Obviously, if you're getting a premium suit, there's an investment, and you want to make sure you get the sizing right.
Absolutely. When you try how to best fit a suit, it's really in today's world, it's you're heavily relying on hopefully accurate size finding mechanisms or size charts on the web, because most of the suits are sold online these days. So most, probably all companies and brands out there have really looked very closely into this because obviously it's a hassle to send forth and back new suits, used suits, etc. When, let's say, you are in between sizes, and that's when I would, and I can only speak for Sailfish and myself, that's when I would put more emphasis on the weight. When people get super anxious about, I'm losing 5 kg or 3 pounds over the season. What am I going to do? I'm right in the middle of sizing. The suit moves with you, and it usually moves 5 kilograms up and down. That's probably the maximum sort of range that you can gain or lose weight, where you won't really feel a significant difference in suit fit. Put a little bit more emphasis on weight than on height, or when getting a suit. That would be my best advice for fitting.
Emphasis on weight and not height.
Yeah.
And how important is the comfort filter? Obviously, with running shoes, it's become quite well adopted and pervasive in the consumer's mind that comfort really matters now. It's an important paradigm. I assume it's the same with the wetsuit. It should feel good.
It's at the very forefront of our promise to the customer. I think this is most important. If we spoke earlier about it, open water is not really a natural realm where we usually spend our lives. So, it adds stress to the body, stress to the mind when you get into an open water situation. The last thing you want to worry about is like feeling uncomfortable in your wetsuit or not being able to breathe properly, etc. So number one, getting a very comfortable suit is absolutely critical. And I always say that when we do demo events, I say, look, it doesn't matter what brand you end up with, as long as you feel comfortable. That's really the number one decisive purchasing reason for a wetsuit. And number two then becomes putting it on correctly. And that's exactly what you mentioned earlier. You can have the best suit in the world. If you put it on the wrong way, it's not going to do you any good. So there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube that can explain it 1,000 times better than me in words. But generally, like the most common mistake that I see is that the suits are not far enough up in the crotch and that area, and that it results then in pulling on the shoulders, pulling it down, it not being long enough, and in addition to that, not having enough, let's say, rubber on the shoulders, so that you can pull the suit a little bit further up on your shoulder. You have more rubber on the shoulder. The shoulder becomes more flexible. You need less energy to move your arms. those are the most common mistakes that we see at races. And that's why when we do have an expo, when we're there at the swim start, we always try to fit people properly in their suits.
Most people that have swum open water with a wetsuit over years will attest to having gotten that wrong at some point. I certainly have, and you know the feeling. You're like, darn, I didn't pull this up high enough. Top tip for getting it off quickly, Jan, for those that want a fast transition.
Get it off while it's still wet on the inside. Sometimes transition is long and you have to run quite a way. First thing when you get out of the water, very first thing, take it down to your hips. That's what you're allowed to do. And then usually it's relatively easy to get it over the feet. But the drier it becomes inside, the harder it is to take off. So do that first half immediately. And the second half should be relatively easy. And
do you advocate lubricants for for the neck and the ankles, or as a manufacturer of these high quality materials, is there any contraindications to needing to put a lubricant around the neck for potential chafing if you're getting used to a suit, or it's not a problem?
Yeah, it also sometimes, not only sometimes, it also depends on how, let's say, on your skin type. There is skin types out there that bruise and that rash super easily, and that basically, I've seen people who haven't been able to find a single brand that worked for them because their skin is so thin or so prone for rash. Back when I raced, I would only put on lubricant in salt water, because when the salt would get between the suit and the neck, it would start shaving. That's something that's really hard to avoid. I was always a bit cautious with putting lubricants around the ankles, because if that sticks and then later on you have it in your running shoes and then you start swimming in your running shoes, it's not the nicest of all feelings. So I'd be a little bit more reluctant there. But it definitely doesn't hurt around the neck area and in the armpit or so. Yeah.
Thanks, Jan. Some great practical insights there. And Sailfish, it's more than just wetsuits. There's also, I believe, over 120 products at the time of recording available from the company as well. Oh,
yeah. We are a full triathlon equipment manufacturer brand. So we offer swim skins for non-wetsuit races. We offer a full range of textile products, accessories, swimwear, bags, a bit of lifestyle stuff to round up the collection.
Yeah, gosh. The team have been busy. Jan, we ask every guest of the show 2 set questions, and they are as follows. 1, if you could boil everything that you've learnt through your career to date as an athlete and now as a pioneer in endurance and innovator into one single piece of advice to help listeners of this show perform at their physical best, what is Jan Sibbersen's sole piece of advice going to be?
Well, I've been lucky enough to have had let's say, for conversation's sake, like 35 year endurance sports career at a relatively high level. And, it's a piece of advice that I mentioned earlier. It's really the consistency part. But I do want to add to that I also believe very firmly that, you only have so many races in you, so many races where you can go like deep, like super deep. And I think, and this probably applies more to the pros out there or to the wannabe pros. And it's probably different for everybody, for every single human being. But let's say you have 20 to 30 races in you over the span of your lifetime triathlon career where you can go deep. And with deep, then you're really done at the finish line. And I think the key to have that long lasting career and to be able to do all these races at peak level is really to be very mindful about the recovery period. So consistency is super, super important. It would be my number one advice for training. But at the same time, recovery is just as important. And I see that a lot of people are running themselves down year after year after year. I mean, suffering is okay at some point, but it shouldn't end up in a decade of suffering. You know, there should be some recovery. And I learned that the hard way. I think towards the end of my swimming career, I realized how, back then we trained differently. We trained the harder, the better, the longer, the more, the better. And that has changed significantly. If you talk to swimmers nowadays, they put much more emphasis on recovery. So finding the right balance between consistent training and consistent and enough recovery time, that would be my sole piece of advice.
And it's hard to argue with that, Jan. That's very powerful. There's a repeat expert edition guest of the show, Jan, Shona Halson, Australian recovery scientist, who has a beautiful little adage, and that is the only training that we benefit from is the training that we recover from. So simple but powerful, right? It
is. Wow.
Easy to lose sight of, isn't it? So, Jan, thank you for sharing.
You only realize it the older you get, because then you realize you can't train as hard anymore as you were able to when you were young.
All the masters athletes agree with that. Jan, the second set question and the final question is, every guest of the show issues listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So what is Jan Sibbersen's physical challenge going to be?
Should I now proclaim some recovery exercise, like sleep 8 hours? That's your challenge for the week.
that can be, Jan.
No, let's give your listeners a swim set.
Okay, what's it going to be?
Let's see. My favorite, or one of my favorite swim sets, was always this mixture between some more aerobic endurance with a bit of sprints, let's say interluded or intertwined. So let's say we do 3,000 meters or 3,000 yards, and we do a 6 times 500, and we break that 500 down to 400 aerobic, so 400 nice and easy. Then we take a 30-second rest. And we go a 50 fast, and then we do a 50 easy to relax. And after that 50 easy, we reassemble ourselves and we go into the second round, and so on and so forth. So 6 500s, 400 free, nice and good aerobic work, 30 seconds rest, 50 fast, and 50 easy. How is that?
Will we call that the Sailfish set?
We call it the Jan Sibbersen set. because if it doesn't work, the brand is not harmed. It's more my name. Okay.
It doesn't. Yeah, we'll call it the Sibbersen set. Brilliant, Jan. It's been a lot of fun, and thank you for sharing some of the learnings from your career to date. And we're excited to see yourself and your team continue to innovate and bring passion and an insight to the world of triathlon endurance sports and swimming. So thank you for stopping by the Physical Performance Show and sharing.
Thank you so much for having me, and all the best to everybody down under and around the world.
So there you have it, another episode of the Physical Performance Show, and I trust and I know you enjoyed today's episode featuring Jan Sibbersen. If you're yet to follow Sailfish, jump over and follow this innovative, wonderful company. And if you're a triathlete or a swimmer, take on Jan's physical challenge and be sure to implement some of the great tips that Jan has shared. I certainly will be with my own swim training. A massive thanks to the great folk who make this show possible each and every week. Daryl Misson, audio engineering, Susan Wilkin, show administration, Matthew Olding, show graphic design, and Milan Borrow, videography. You can find the show now over on YouTube, and there you'll find video episodes and snippets from each of our releases. Now, if you're a runner or triathlete struggling with bone, tendon, or joint-related concerns, then Pogo Physio's online 45-minute telehealth consultations can be an ideal vehicle to help get you back to your physical best. Jump over to pogophysio.com.au/telehealth and you can schedule your 45-minute appointment with myself or any of the Pogo Physio team. If you have feedback regarding the show, you can find me readily over on social at Brad_beer, and consider posting a podsy. That's a screenshot of the episode that you've been enjoying at any moment in time and tagging in the show at Physical Performance Show over on the social handles. We will reshare those and we love to see them coming through. So until next week, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.